almost busted in Laredo, but for reasons that I'd rather not disclose.
I smoke pot, and I like it a lot. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer to use than alcohol. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting responsible marijuana smokers in America. And to learn what you can do to help, please contact NORML at www.norml.org or call toll-free at 888-67-NORML.
The show was long and we was just sitting there, and we'd come to play and not just for the ride.
And distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. This is your daily audio stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular audio podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, normalaudiostash.com. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time.
Welcome to the NORML Daily Audio Stash. I'm Radical Russ Belville, your guest host for the world's #1 podcast regarding marijuana law reform. Let me offer a huge thanks to your usual host, Chris Goldstein, and to NORML for having me here today to speak with the thousands of you who are fighting against adult marijuana prohibition. It's Thursday, January 31st, 2008, which is of special significance to Nolan Ryan, Justin Timberlake, Portia de Rossi, and me, for today is our birthday. I've just turned 40 this morning, and I couldn't ask for a better birthday present than hosting today's NORML Daily Audio Stash. Well, except perhaps an executive order relegalizing all forms of hemp and granting amnesty to all nonviolent marijuana prisoners, and given the current administration, I may have to wait until I'm 41 years old for that one. I'm the Associate Director of Oregon NORML, headquartered in Portland, Oregon, one of the many local NORML chapters run by dedicated volunteers who give their time, money, and effort to enact positive cannabis policy at the grassroots level. Find your local NORML chapter at www.norml.org and get involved with like-minded adults who are changing city and state laws to end the harassment of responsible adults who choose marijuana over martinis, cannabis instead of cigarettes, or replace pharmaceuticals with farmed medicine. If there is no chapter in your local area, get 4 of your friends together and start your own chapter. You can learn how at norml.org. Here are the top marijuana news stories we're following at NORML this week. Coincidentally, our first story comes to us from Idaho, the state of my birth. This Monday, the mayor of Hailey, Idaho, announced the intention of the city council to challenge the constitutionality of 3 pro-marijuana initiatives passed by the voters in the last municipal election. This decision reverses a vote of the Hailey City Council members earlier this month to nullify the provisions of these voter-approved initiatives. Lawmakers alleged that the 3 initiatives conflicted with state and federal laws and therefore could not be legally implemented by the city. Hailey's city attorney has said that the city is not legally required to accept the outcome of voter initiatives. But marijuana reform advocate Ryan Davidson, who was able to pass 3 of the 4 pro-pot initiatives on the 2007 ballot, forced the hand of city officials by refiling his 4 initiatives last Wednesday. Mayor Rick Davis announced the decision of the City Council to abandon their efforts to amend the initiatives and instead press forward with a challenge in court as to the legality of voter-approved initiatives in the state of Idaho. Mayor Davis said, quote, "It's going to tell us what we can enforce legally and what we cannot. I just want to get it from the court." End quote. The first initiative to pass directs local police to make activities related to the investigation, citation, and/or arrest of adult cannabis users their lowest law enforcement priority. Similar deprioritization measures have been enacted in numerous cities nationwide, including Seattle, Washington, Santa Cruz, California, Missoula, Montana, Denver, Colorado, and Columbia, Missouri. The second voter-approved initiative exempts qualified medical cannabis users from local prosecution. Similar policies have been implemented in 12 states. 4 of those states, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, and Montana, share borders with Idaho. The third measure legalizes the production of hemp as an industrial crop. Idaho, of course, relies heavily on agriculture for the local economy. NORML Executive Director Alan St. Pierre strongly criticized the Council's decision. Apparently, the long-held Democratic notion of a government by the people for the people no longer applies in Idaho, St. Pierre said. These lawmakers are willing to cast aside a Democratic vote by their own constituents in order to bow at the altar of pot prohibition. End quote.
Hi, I'm Rick Steves, and you're enjoying NORML's Daily Audio Stash. Please take a moment right now to support this organization by donating online.
In medical research news this week, we're highlighting a story from the NORML weekly press release that reported another set of important data showing that cannabinoids may, one day, be used for effective cancer treatments. Here's the full story. From Italy, cannabinoids offer novel option for brain cancer treatment, study says. Cannabinoids possess anti-tumor activity in glioblastoma cell lines and may offer a new therapeutic option for the treatment of brain cancer, according to a review published in the January issue of the journal Expert Review of Neurotherapeutics. Investigators at the University of Serbia Center of Neuroscience wrote, quote, "Cannabinoids have been shown to exert anti-proliferative effects on a wide spectrum of cells in culture. Of interest, cannabinoids have displayed a great potency in reducing glioma tumor cell growth, either in vitro or in animal experimental models. Moreover, cannabinoids appear to be selective anti-tumoral agents as they kill glioma cells without affecting the viability of non-transformed counterparts." End quote. In 2006, investigators at Complutense University in Spain reported that the intracranial administration of THC decreased recurrent GBM tumor growth in humans. More information about this story is available at norml.org and with links at normlaudiostash.com. NORML's online report and booklet, Emerging Clinical Applications for Cannabis and Cannabinoids, has recently been updated and includes more information about this type of research. Links to the report are available at norml.org. Audio Stash producer Chris Goldstein spoke with Dr. Mitch Earleywine yesterday about some of the important forms of cancer research utilizing cannabinoids. Mitch is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York and author of Understanding Marijuana, a new look at the scientific evidence. His next book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana, will be out at the end of February, and you can catch a monthly column from Mitch in High Times magazine. Here's Mitch Earleywine and Chris Goldstein interviewing yesterday.
Great to speak with you today again, Mitch. We're going to start with a story that was in the weekly press release last week from NORML. Cannabinoids offer novel option for brain cancer treatment, study says. We're going to talk a little bit further about many of the anti-cancer properties of cannabinoids that have been discovered in the last few years. But let's touch on this story right away. It starts out, cannabinoids possess anti-tumor activity in glioblastoma cell lines. Basically, it kills brain tumors. This is a pretty amazing thing and something they haven't found another medication for.
It's a wild finding, and I don't want to overstate the situation, but it really does look promising. And when you think about how complicated cancer is and how prevalent it really is a big killer throughout the world, this is an intriguing pathway for new anti-cancer drugs. I don't want to give people the impression that, smoking cannabis is some kind of new anti-cancer therapy. It's just that we're discovering more and more that the cannabinoid system is markedly more complicated and markedly more interesting than we ever dreamed.
And using these exogenous cannabinoids like THC and cannabidiol that come from the cannabis plant to manipulate the endocannabinoid system, this is something that it's emerging research. This is something that's sort of brand new to medical science.
Oh, it's to the point where, in fact, I think even the scientists involved are surprised. And it's curious. You have to sort of understand how a tumor grows. And a tumor, you think of some dark, nasty, horrible-looking thing. In fact, it's really live pink tissue that has to, get stuff from the host. It has to get blood and nutrients and stuff like that. And the cannabinoids seem to be involved in basically cutting it off, making it sure it doesn't get the kinds of things that would help it be this big, healthy tumor. And, in fact, that's exactly what we want, and that's why both in, animal studies now and even some intracranial stuff with tumor growth in humans, the cannabinoid drugs are really showing a lot of promise. I think it's really exciting.
Let me also ask you too, Mitch, as somebody who is, a published author in peer-reviewed journals, this latest study came out in the expert review of neurotherapeutics, and it does talk about what you just touched on, the selective ability of cannabinoids to target the tumor cells specifically. It is being published in these journals. It seems to be some sort of academic acceptance of this kind of research, but is there enthusiasm for it now? I mean, is there a sense that cannabinoids are this exciting new realm?
Well, it's interesting because, in 2006 we saw some data come out in Spain where the attitudes about cannabis itself are markedly different, and I think in some ways there's a lot of regional variation on this. None of these scientists are saying, and by the way, this has a lot to do with medical cannabis or other issues like that. We're really talking about THC at the molecular level, so it's a different set of issues. What I do find is more and more mainstream journals, especially if it's really focused at the cellular level, are open to this kind of thing. And you don't even see the little paragraphs in the discussion section with the little disclaimers that you used to see back in, say, the late 90s, where it would say, we know this doesn't mean anything about medical cannabis. Now people don't even bother with that. And I think that's a sign that people understand that the science really needs to be separate from the politics and that we should let the data be our guide rather than any crazy political agenda.
Yeah, we've talked about this sort of catch-22 in the past year. I've spoken with you and with John Morgan and Paul Armentano and even Alan St. Pierre. Note that there is, although the science and the data do need to be separated from the politics, unless the politics and the policy changes a bit, we won't get as much data anymore.
The sad thing is, particularly at the human level, we see a lot of impediments under those realms. So, yeah, it's easy to explain to a granting agency that you want to use a THC extract or a synthetic THC in some kind of rodent model, but as soon as you take the next step and say, okay, now we want to apply this in humans, that's where we see a lot of feet dragging, at least here in the U.S. But now that we've got data coming out of Italy, data coming out of Spain, and throughout Europe, I think, in fact, the United States is going to get behind on this. We're not going to have the best clinical trials on this when it comes to human data. And I hate to say it, but I think the drug companies there are going to have a big advantage over the drug companies here as far as developing lines of cannabinoid drugs in the treatment of cancer and then related problems.
And we've already seen that in some ways with Sativex and GW Pharmaceuticals' successful winning of prescription status for that in some countries. Well, and this is very interesting because just this week there was a lot of media furor over this sort of reefer madness story out of New Zealand. We touched on it yesterday with Paul. And this is old data. Just last, 3-4 weeks ago, we did a long thing with Paul and with you about the smoking machines and lung cancer risks. So how do we countenance this, the fact that the individual cannabinoids within the cannabis plant are found to have all these anti-cancer properties, that Tashkin's data shows that moderate cannabis users are in fact at a somewhat decreased risk for lung cancer in California at least. But then there's this concern over the hydrocarbons in smoking itself. So how do we figure all this out? I mean, is there going to be some definitive test that can tell us about the safety of inhaled cannabis and its potential for cancer or anti-cancer out there?
I mean, it's going to be no surprise to you or any of our listeners that I would run to the vaporizer explanation. I'm finding more and more people who are really clearly misinformed about cannabis and even some of the lung data are still willing to follow the line of reasoning that the vaporizer will create a mist that holds cannabinoids in it that doesn't have the tars and other carcinogens associated with actually igniting the plant. And suddenly they're nodding their heads when I talk about that part in a way that really surprises me, that they often don't quite believe Tashkin's data and the long-term smokers actually not being at all at risk for lung cancer. So there's something about going from smoke to vapor that I think people find intuitively appealing. And in fact, my data and Don Abrams' data suggests this really is a wonderful way to administer the cannabinoids, and something that shows a lot of promise with literally none of the respiratory problems associated with them.
Let's have a little fun here, Mitch. Let's say that you as a research scientist had an almost unlimited amount of funding. Let's say you had a grant for, $100 million. Would you be able to put together the kind of research that would definitively put this question to rest? What would it take?
I think I could do it, but it would take a tremendous amount of time. The only thing that people are finding persuasive anymore are these longitudinal data sets like Don Tashkin has. And the irony is he's been gathering this stuff since the late 80s. So here we are, we've got people who are sick right now, and I'm going to have to say, okay, a 10-year follow-up, comparing two groups, one with vaporizer and one with smoked cannabis, and we're going to look at, every single correlate about, what air they breathed and what cigarette they smoked and everything else. And it would take literally a decade. And then, unfortunately, what would happen is people would say, oh, well, it hasn't been a long enough time. The fact that we really don't have, cannabis-only smokers getting lung cancer at rates higher than people who don't smoke at all. Here, we've got the data as best as we can right now. This is markedly like, where we've seen things go with cigarettes before, when people realized, hey, cigarettes, we've got the data now, they really are carcinogens. And here we have comparable data with cannabis with comparable duration saying, no, it's just not happening. So I feel like even with that unlimited amount of money, I don't have time now. We got people who are sick now. And then the other irony is, of course, if you've got cancer and AIDS and wasting and things like that, do you really care about developing lung cancer 20 years from now? Of course not. It's just an absurd question on all levels, and particularly given both the laboratory evidence and the correlational stuff I have on the vaporizer, it just seems immoral to waste people's time on something like this when the medicine's right there and markedly safer than stuff we can get over the counter.
Yeah, and that brings up sort of the other extreme here. I mean, we've been talking about sort of proving the safety and finding out these things to the nth degree in the molecular level in some cases here, but don't we as a culture accept a certain amount of risk in our medications and our medical treatment already? Risk that is just not there with cannabis, that is there with even the most common over-the-counter medications out there today.
I mean, and the funny thing is, so, all the over-counter antihistamines, all of those kinds of things, of course, we have data suggest they're safe, but they're certainly no more safe than cannabis. But the other things we do in life, people are allowed to bungee jump, you can ride a motorcycle, you can drive a car, you can do anything you want in all these other domains that people will say, yes, this is, in fact, a risky behavior. And you take certain steps to make sure it's not risky. Isn't that really all we ask of our fellow citizens? And, of course, we do things to make sure we don't harm each other. Well, here's use of a plant with, literally an 8,000-year history with extremely limited negative consequences and absolutely no harm done to other people. What more do we want? What other data would it really take to convince folks? It's astounding.
Very interesting. Well, even as that philosophical argument rages, there will be this undeniable set of research, as you mentioned out there before, as the research sort of speaks for itself out there. As this anti-cancer research becomes more prevalent, and of course we know that cancer rates are, of course, rising in almost all populations, especially in Western countries like Europe and right here in the United States. It's an issue we have to deal with every day. Won't there be some sort of outcry from the public for some new research? I mean, we hear all the time about the investment made into cancer research, especially when it comes to the sort of media darling cancers. I hate to put it that way, but like breast cancer and the like, we hear about huge investments of tax dollars, private foundations into this kind of thing. When will that money come into cannabinoid research, do you think?
Well, it's interesting because even with the ones that get more press, breast carcinoma and things like that, the preclinical studies are making it clear that cannabinoids have a whole lot of potential. And I feel like, especially as the country is aging and these things become more prevalent, we're going to get a bigger outcry. I feel like the thing to do is to say, rather than waiting until you have it or someone you know has it, let's jump ahead just a little bit. Let's rally around our congressional leaders who are actually approving the funding for these kinds of things and make sure this line of research doesn't die in order to essentially go down a blind alley that we don't know if it's going to have as much potential as this one or not, and really show that, especially for people who fail the standard therapies like surgery and radiotherapy and stuff like that, this has got to be available in order to help decrease tumor growth.
Well, and also, too, I mean, I think that even the patients who have survived cancer and frankly, survived the treatments, there's been an outcry to change the way we even treat cancer, not only because a lot of those therapies aren't successful with the most aggressive forms of cancer, and when you talk about brain cancer, that is often an inoperable form of cancer, but also because the treatments themselves are just so incredibly harsh, and often, again, sometimes the treatments do more harm than good to the patients themselves. So even cancer survivors say that there's got to be a different way to treat it out there.
I agree wholeheartedly, and when you watch the aversiveness of the chemotherapies, for example, and that they're often administered in situations where you're really just trying to prevent a return. It's not that the cancer is even present any longer. It would just really warm my heart to think that there'd be a cannabinoid drug that could help people sidestep that, because it is truly, truly gruesome.
I want people to understand, too, when we talk about changing the face of cancer treatment with the type of cannabinoid therapies that are being experimented on right now, it would be the difference between, finding out you have cancer and then going in for chemotherapy regimens that last weeks and months and leave your body racked, or radiotherapy regimens that do the same, or even extreme surgeries that can be life-altering surgeries in and of themselves. These drugs would be administered directly to the cancer cells. In many of the ways they do it in the lab, just directly to the cancer tumor itself. And that would be it. A simple injection would be the extent of the treatment, I assume, here.
I don't think that's at all science fiction. I really feel like there's the potential for that kind of thing, particularly given the preclinical trials showing that tumor growth can decrease dramatically in response to these kinds of medications.
I hate to ask one more broad philosophical question here, but with that kind of sea change in medicine and the way we treat cancer, a very common form of medical treatment in this country, and frankly, Mitch, a very lucrative form of treatment as well. I mean, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, surgeries, this stuff isn't cheap, and there's essentially a huge industry built up around this right now. Is this also, I mean, are we getting into the realm where this research is so revolutionary that it's sort of like decriminalizing or legalizing marijuana, that you get the sort of entrenched arguments from law enforcement on that? And will there be the entrenched industry lobby if these drugs are so successful in the future, do you think?
Most of the folks I know who are associated with particularly the chemotherapies actually understand and don't have the sort of foot dragging you'd associate with people who are just in it for a buck. They really understand that there's got to be an improvement on this. And in fact, things have improved dramatically in the last 5 years or so. What I do see happening is people don't appreciate that, in fact, if these cannabinoid medications were available to decrease the use of chemotherapy, the medical use of smoked and vaporized cannabis would actually drop. And I think, I don't want to lose the medical cannabis users and make sure that they, still have their rights to use it if they need it. What's funny is if we had cannabinoid meds that were decreasing tumor size and preventing the return of tumors, nobody would be so ill from chemotherapy that they would actually have to have the anti-nausea cannabis anyway. So it's kind of a curious way where the cannabinoid medicine could actually decrease the need for medical cannabis.
Very, very interesting. Well, Mitch, this has been a fascinating discussion, as always, here today. I know we touched on a lot of topics, and folks can also check out an updated version of NORML's report, Emerging Clinical Applications for Cannabis and Cannabinoids. There's an updated version of that online at NORML.org, and we have direct links right up at NORMLAudiostash.com, and it reviews nearly 200 studies on the therapeutic use of cannabis and a lot in there on cancer as well. Mitch, thank you again for joining us today. I look forward to speaking with you again next week.
Oh, me too. Take care.
That was Dr. Mitch Earleywine speaking with Audio Stash producer Chris Goldstein yesterday via telephone. Mitch is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York and author of Understanding Marijuana, A New Look at the Scientific Evidence. His next book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana, will be out at the end of February. Links to his books are available at NORMLAudiostash.com.
Are you or is someone you know a marijuana smoker? Have you or someone in your family been arrested for a marijuana violation? You need to know the truth about pot. NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, is the most comprehensive source of information regarding marijuana and its effects on health, as well as legal issues. NORML even offers a database of lawyers specializing in cannabis in your area. NORML is the nation's largest and most successful marijuana law reform organization and has spent decades gathering the knowledge and science on everything related to cannabis. NORML is simply the best resource to find out the truth about marijuana, connect with a lawyer in your area, or help end marijuana prohibition. Visit NORML.org, that's NORML.org, or call us toll-free at 888-67-NORML, that's 888-67-NORML.
You're listening to Pod Safe Music on NORML's Daily Audio Stash.
Yes, it's time to dig into the vaults of pro-freedom, pro-marijuana music here at the Audio Stash. One of the benefits of volunteering with NORML at events like the Seattle Hemp Fest and Portland Hempstock is the opportunity to meet great musicians and artists who channel their art into an instrument of change and education. One such group is the Latino hip-hop group Los Marijuanos. Whenever there is a hemp rally, major protest, or private fundraiser for the cannabis community, you can usually find Ponyboy and FCM Click of Los Marijuanos there, adding their voices to all of yours in calling for an end to adult marijuana prohibition. So sit back with your favorite strain and get your groove on as we feature the Los Marijuanos crowd favorite, Time to Get High, from the album Puro Pleito. You can learn more about Los Marijuanos and listen to their music at their website, www.losmarijuanos4life.com. That's www.losmarijuanos4life.com.
Señoras y señores, directamente de Chicago, Illinois, Los Marijuanos. ¡Aplauso, aplauso! All right.
I guess it's time to get high. It's time to get high. It's time to get high. I said it's time to get high. It's time to get high. I said it's time to get high. It's time to get high. Yeah, it's time to get high. Roll up the split, I shoot the gift. Like cannabis sativa, I uplift. Get the freestyling when I get the smoking. If it's true skunk, then homie, I'm choking. I pass it on, like Cheech and Chong. Yeah. Now we'll take a hit from the bone, like Cypress Hill. So what's the deal, homie, chill. Los Marijuanos come real. So recognize, realize, legalize. and keep your eyes on the prize so you can keep on smoking them trees. Take a big hit to drop you on your knees. True G's recognize the flame from the rag. Roll up the buds with the orange zigzags. I cannot lie, I wanna fly, I wanna fly. I guess it's time to get high. I guess it's time to get high. It's time to get high. It's time to get high. I said it's time to get high. It's time to get high. I said it's time to get high. It's time to get high. Yeah, it's time to get high. Or should I say blaze? I got that true Buddha to put you in a daze. I raise my bowl to the air. You pack it in, I pack it in, don't stare. Homie, share. More chop, they don't say as greedy. Motherfucking pack the true butts to the needy. Yes, indeedy. I pack it in a bowl, roll it in the paper, and pop in the CMB taper. Now let's ride, cruise, you can't lose. Who's got the dollar for the booze? I got 5 on it, got it good. Do what I could, say what? Support the hood. I got bass, beats, and the rhymes. Educate myself when I read the high times. Look at my watch, 420, oh my. Spark up the joint, it's time to get high. Time to get high.
Una jalada de esta mota, vato, y te pones como araña, loco. Eres este cabrón. Párate, cabrón.
I guess it's time to get high. It's time to get high. It's time to get high. I said it's time to get high. It's time to get high. I said it's time to get high. It's time to get high. Yeah, it's time to get high. Come on, roll it up, roll it up. Get the fucking light in, choke it up, choke it up. I get the cutting up the blunt. I got that box of swisher so homies don't front. Hydroponic, bubonic, supersonic. It's ironic how he's up on it. True skills from the east. Attacking like a beast. Eating up suckers like a feast. Booyah, pony boy coming to ya. Busting through ya. Punk, I never knew ya. So act like you know. Go ahead and plant the seed and let it grow. Let it grow. Let's smoke up a pound. Cause you know the Marijuanos are down. It's time to say goodbye. But with the words of wisdom, it's time to get high. It's time to get high. High. It's time to get high. Yo, Scribe. Who's this motherfucker on the floor, man? Hey. Hey, get up. He came with you. Fuck, you're taking him home. Hey, dog, you gotta get up. Get up. Come on, dog, you gotta get up. You can't handle that flame. I don't know why you came. Marijuanos, home. Come on. All right, now. All right. Scribe's gonna take you home. Yeah, fire up that flame. Come on, Ivan, man. Pass some papers. It's time to get high. Yes, fine. Let's go. We're out here, dog. Let's go.
And that's it for today's NORML Daily Audio Stash. Remember to tune in every weekday at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Time for the latest from NORML. The Daily Audio Stash is produced by Chris Goldstein, executive producer Alan St. Pierre. You can catch up on all the latest audio stashes at the website www.normalaudiostash.com and the latest from NORML at www.norml.org. I'm Radical Russ Belville, Associate Director of Oregon NORML, sitting in today for Chris Goldstein. You can learn more about Oregon NORML at www.org.org. You can also catch me on the air on my own political talk radio show, The Russ Belville Show, every weekend on XM Satellite Radio or a station near you. Check out my website, www.radicalruss.net, for scheduled times and stations. For everyone here at the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, I thank you for listening and hope that all your marijuana experiences are positive ones. Remember to be responsible and set a good example. Learn NORML's guidelines for responsible marijuana use at NORML.org. I leave you today with a quote from hemp farmer, former president, and founding father Thomas Jefferson, who once said, quote, "If people let government decide which foods they eat and medicines they take, their bodies will soon be in as sorry a state as are the souls of those who live under tyranny." End quote. Take care of yourselves and each other.
The podcasting technology of NORML is made possible by Red Aphid Interactive Media. More information at redaphid.com.